Welcome to the MBVS show. Boom! I'm your host, podcast, author, all-around swell guy, Mark Hayford, coming to you from the frozen swamps of Pennsylvania, baby. And we are talking mental wellness with 4 of my friends, colleagues. They're all esteemed. They're all here. Let's start in New York with the guy who's on CNN, BBC. He's authored 4 books. He's been in the mental wellness game for over 30 years. Trauma and bereavement expert, Dr. Norman Freed.
Woo! Great to be here, guys. Happy we're here.
We have everyone's favorite neuroscientist, psychology professor. She says words that I have to Google. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Dr. Haley Nelson.
Hey, everybody. Google's my best friend, too.
Hey. Ain't no shame in the game. West Coast, when she's not gracing TEDx stages, when she's not giving great voice, when she's not winning Emmy, she is getting a tan. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Tasia Valenza.
I'm just going to woo anyway, just for myself as well.
Check it out. Down south. I'm not talking Kentucky. I'm not talking Texas. I'm not talking New Mexico. No. I'm talking Florida, where she's got palm trees and cool breeze. She's a podcaster. She's an author for children. We need more of that. She's an actor. She's voiceover. What doesn't she do? She's Barb Heller.
Woo! I imitate Celine Dion also. Remember that.
Yes. There's so much. Guys, amazing. Welcome back. Thanks for everybody taking the time away from your businesses, from your families, from your lives to talk mental wellness for a hot 30 minutes. It continues to be the hottest topic in the planet. And I know we do a weekly show on Clubhouse where we come together and we encourage and all this, and everybody brings something different to the puzzle, different piece to the puzzle, right? So I'm glad to be here with all of you. How's everybody doing today?
Good. Thank God. I'm so glad to be alive.
We all took a pause there.
I know. It was like, I was that sense of like, well, I don't want to.
Who goes first?
Else. Yeah, exactly.
Let's get at it. Before we get at it, of course, we're going to read the disclaimer. So the content heard here today is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare providers. Any questions that you may have regarding a medical condition or potential mental illness, never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you've heard in this room. Bam! Let's go. So,
woo!
Okay.
Well done.
We have
very well done. Good legal.
Thank you. We have a couple topics here of what we want to bring up. We're going to be talking depression. We're going to be talking emotions. We're going to talk about harnessing them. We're going to be talking about, signs and all this good stuff. So first we have, and by the way, before we get into this, if you have a question, if you have a topic, if you would like us to address anonymously something that you're dealing with, we're all available out there in the world. As the show progresses, as we progress, we're going to have better means of getting in contact with us, but we're out there on social media. So send somebody something, you know what I'm saying? Bada boom, bada bing. Okay. Instagram, whatever, TikTok, LinkedIn, yourmom.com. Doesn't matter. Send it. We'll get it on. Let's go. All right.
And give us questions that we can use for our next shows because we want to hear from you.
Absolutely. Show is about you and for you. Well, maybe not about you. You know what I'm saying? Okay, here we go. All right, let's go with this. The recent news of Chesley Christ's suicide has me worried about my own feelings of depression. What are the signs of depression and what can I do about it? So here we go. Here's someone that was the 2019 Miss USA. Here is someone who was a spokesperson for mental wellness, actually spoke on Mental Wellness Awareness Day, and this tragedy happens and people are shocked again. And as we get into this, and I want to throw it to all of you to roundtable discuss. Look, we see this from celebrities. The depression has no discrimination. It doesn't matter age, color, what's in the bank account, race, titles, all this, right? I mean, again, when we started embarking together on this mental wellness room about a year ago, it was Meghan Markle who was on Oprah, and she was saying, I was getting these feelings. And in my mind, I was supposed to be stronger than that. But was she? She's a human being. So here we go. Another tragedy, another life taken too soon. We're talking depression. This person's asking, what are some of the signs? What can they do about it? What do you guys got? Talk about it.
Norman, do you want to start and talk about some of the signs? And
Sure, that would be great. So it's important that everybody who's listening recognizes that depression, in colloquial terms, is sadness, melancholia. We feel hopeless and we cry. But that's only a few of the symptoms of depression. There are about 7 vegetative symptoms of depression that are physical. not emotional, and they include what we call lethargy or malaise, psychomotor retardation. It's as if you're walking from one side of the room in molasses or wet cement. Energy just is not coming through. There's poor concentration, irritability, changes in sleep, changes in appetite, difficulty with your relationships. All of these things are really physical symptoms of depression. And of course, the emotional ones to be looking for would be moments of melancholia, crying unexpectedly, involuntarily, feelings of hopelessness and despair. When you put them all together, you get a large profile of someone who might be actually depressed. And it's important that we notice both the physical and the emotional signs so that we don't just say, well, you'll get over it. We really want to take this seriously.
And one thing that I always like to remind my students when I introduce this portion of the, mental disorders chapter and intro psych and things like that is you can't tell if someone's depressed just by looking at them, because sometimes, as you mentioned, it can disturbances in appetite. Well, some people, that means they binge eat and they eat it, or maybe not even binge eat, but Ben and Jerry's become their new best friend, or they're eating too much and they're moving really slowly and have lack of motivation. But for other people, maybe they just aren't hungry and they forget to eat and they're losing weight. So here's the same diagnosis of major depressive disorder, and there are different subtypes, which is beyond the scope of today's talk. But some people, they have the overeating, not really moving, and so they maybe gain weight. And then other people, they lose weight. They're not eating. They're overactive. They can't sleep at night. And so completely different spectrums, but the same disorder. And they're still having that lowered mood and feeling sad. The emotions can still be similar, but the physical disturbances can be complete opposite ends of the spectrum. So it's very difficult to say, oh, you're not depressed. You're so active. Look, you look great. You've lost so much weight. You must be doing so well. But deep down inside, they're depressed. So it's very true.
Which, by the way, Dr. Haley, that it would be true of Chesley Christ herself, who was in such great shape and seemed to be on top of the world. But we don't know what people carry on the side. And then we appreciate that there could be a silent ache in a lot of people.
Yeah, and I can speak to that because I had generalized anxiety for a really long time, and it became acute. And when it became acute, I got very depressed, and I went to my first psychiatrist, and I was like, why am I doing this? I'm so into eating healthy as I drink my matcha, and I exercise and I pray and I do all the things. And that was around the time that I started meditating. And I remember there's two things I want to say about this. A lot of people slap, well, you're an Ashkenazi Jew and you have, the genes of people who are bipolar and have, borderline personality disorder and whatever it is, it's in your genes. Like, you're going to have it, and here's something to take. And I've always said this in our room because I'm a big proponent of not doing everything you can to not take medicine, or when you take medicine, if that's going to help you, which it helps so many people, along with that, have a game plan of a million other things you can do to feel good and try a lot of cool things, because you'll learn and you'll have fun doing that. At the time when I started meditating and exercising even more, it actually got worse for me. And I want to speak to that because I think a lot of people don't understand what acute anxiety or acute depression is. And this lady clearly was, to me, when I read what was going on, had a moment of acute anxiety and depression. And unfortunately, when you go through that, which I had a long time ago, it's terrifying because it feels like the gloom and doom will never go away. And I just want to say before we move on, as someone who experienced that and survived that, it totally can. And I was functional. I was not in a malaise. I just had this terrifying doom and gloom, and I can speak to it for hours. It's like a whole session, but it really, really can. Even though it feels like it's never ending, if you get the right help and you get the right support and you have someone like Dr. Norman, you could actually really graduate from it and then learn the lessons and share them with others.
Brilliant. Excellent.
Wow.
And when you're in those moments, don't hesitate. Even if you don't have Dr. Norman's cell phone in your back pocket, right? There are hotlines out there. They are there 24/7.
I'm gonna give one right now.
Yeah, perfect.
In the United States, the number for suicide hotline is 1-800-273-TALK. So it's 1-800-273-TALK. And if you're in other parts of the world, you can Google www.befriend, but Befrienders, BEFRIENDERS.org, and you will be able to locate an international helpline.
All right. No, that's great. That's great for resources. Tasia, you're a mom, most importantly. You got all these accomplishments. You got teenagers, right? Young 20s and that time. For any thoughts on this? I mean, just from the mom standpoint, not the professional, but the human being standpoint. Any thoughts?
To be honest, my heart is so broken for her family, and as a mom, it's so hard to conceptualize that your child could be that depressed, and they didn't reach out. That my feeling is that, I have my own children, and it makes me wonder sometimes, do I know them as well as I think? Because, on the outside, I try to check in, and I have 2 kids now at college, and so they're further away from me now. And it really makes me, wonder again. I think that they're doing great, but how can I be more sensitive and aware to let them know, that I'm here, and if they need help, and if they're asking for it, rather than just covering it up. Because I think so often that's the thing, is that especially in the social media world, we all try to put on a good face. And so much of it now is, presentation, that I think it can make us even more lonely, because everyone's, presenting. And that's just something that, as a mom, I'm really trying to be more aware of my own feelings, and then also give them a space to be able to really share what's going on with them without the judgment from me to them, so they can speak. Because a lot of times, as a parent, as soon as I start trying to fix it, they shut down. So sometimes it's just that awareness of like, how are you feeling? And then creating a space for them to speak without me trying to, make sure everything's okay. And did you do this? Did you do that? So it's a hard place to be, but I certainly feel for every parent who's trying to, you try to protect your children. And when that happens, it's like you can never get over it. It's just very painful.
Yeah. What you're saying, Tasia, is so fitting, because you speak about giving great voice. And I think what's so profound about what you're telling and reminding all of us is that we need to give our children the ability to use their voice and to say how they feel. And it wouldn't just be our children, but all people in this world. If you could practice using your voice and saying how you feel, you will get the help you need.
100%. And I want to tag on to that because I love this group so much. We all really speak the same heart language, and everything that's said comes from the heart. I recently heard a story that happened several years ago about a boy who lives close to where I live now, who was kicked out of school because he did something that was wrong. It was against school values, and he was taken out of the yearbook. And his friends got together and made a yearbook for him. He was a senior. He had like 2 months left to go. And I don't agree with what the school did. But the worst thing that they did is they told the kids, don't talk about it. It's better for him if we just don't talk about it. And Dr. Norman and I were actually talking about this very concept this week, and how that cancel culture of, if someone does something wrong in a community, there should be a kumbaya session where they get together either in a church or a synagogue or a school cafeteria, and they sit on chairs or they sit in the grass and they say, how do you feel about what happened? And even have the transgressor get up and say, I'm really sorry for what I did. I get that I'm suspended, but please don't kick me out of the yearbook. I spent 5 years here. I spent my whole childhood. Right. Something where there needs to be a middle place where we can process, because what these kids are learning is, it was wrong. And then silence. And so these kids grow up thinking, I can't do anything wrong. And if I do, I will be silent. And that, it like goes back to what we fought for to get democracy and freedom of speech. And I mean, I don't want to talk, we could do 7 sessions on just, the First Amendment and how important it is right now in cancel culture. But I just want to say that it really does add to this black and white thinking. And we can't afford to be in that space.
Yeah, we got to move on with this, unfortunately, but I agree. And what a balanced conversation here. A, B, listen, more listening, more discussion, less division. That's kind of what needs to happen here. But great. Yeah, great hot takes, everybody. Let's go to this next question here. This is interesting, a little different. I go from 0 to 60 in 5 seconds flat. This is from Christina Hayford. I'm kidding.
I thought that was for me.
No, I'm going to get punched in the throat. I go from 0 to 60 in 5 seconds flat when my spouse, or really anyone, does something that pisses me off. Everyone in bold says I need to regulate my emotions better, but how? Well, first of all, if everyone's saying it, we definitely need to talk about it. I'll just drop it right here with this. And I always teach my kids, and I always try to go with this, that if you lose your cool, you lose. Because anytime I've ever exploded, it was never a good outcome or ending for anyone, especially me. That's my thoughts, but let me drop it to the panel. So what can this person do to regulate their emotions? And Dr. Haley, coincidentally enough, you just recently, within the last 24 hours,
lost my shit.
Yes, totally on that poor man that lives with you.
Well said.
Always using great voice.
Yeah.
I'm going to step away.
We all relate.
What are the thoughts?
Well, so it's one of those things. I love this idea of if you lose your cool, you lose. But at the same point, we have to be able to lose our cool and feel that it's okay, because we are all human. We do all have emotions. Now, there are better ways to be able to express your feelings and your emotion. But when you do lose your cool, it's the appropriate thing to do, which I still have to do, is apologize when that happened. But first of all, we're all in this together. Past 2 years being in a pandemic, the stress level for everybody, the frustration for everybody on planet Earth has been heightened and is elevated. So little things that you might have been able to shrug off, you might notice making you feel a little bit more uncomfortable. And I do pride myself on being able to, use my prefrontal cortex and not just go by my amygdala. And, it's not just action, just reacting. But when it was, in a week, there was time, a bunch of little things. And then all of a sudden, my water line in my refrigerator decided to leak all over my hardwood floors. And it was while I was out of the house taking care of the kids and doing all of this. And when I come home, I see my husband and he's mad because he's the one left to clean it up. And my response was, well, if you did the dishes like I asked you to, you would have seen the water spilled all over the floor. And then, of course, that triggered him. And then we started going back and forth. And
so
at that moment,
real life.
Real, and I feel comfortable enough to share this with you. But the beautiful thing was my son, who's 8, who has, 8-year-old kids, they need to learn this self-regulation. And so for the past several years, I would talk to him, when you're feeling this way, when you're angry at me, or when you're angry at daddy, or whoever it is, let's take yourself aside. We're going to work on some grounding. We're going to do some breathing that Tasia has beautifully showed us last week, and in through our nose, out through our mouth, blow out those birthday candles, and don't think about the future. Think about right now. Focus on your, my 8-year-old at night pulled me aside and said, Mom, let's stay away, Daddy, okay? Focus on breathing. Don't think about the future. Don't think about the floors. Let's think about how we're breathing. And I just look at him and I'm like, oh my gosh. So I was a bad wife, but a good mom. That's how I was feeling in that moment. So
you were a human wife, but how wonderful that you were able to really download that information that he could already share back with you. What a gift.
I guess he was listening to me.
what your 8-year-old son, Dr. Haley, was reminding you is of the concept of mindfulness, which is a very important process that we need to undertake in order to regulate our emotions better. Remember, structure regulates our affect. So what we do first is we structure our mind and we think more quietly. What are the possibilities, the possible outcomes of this event? How can I create better boundaries so that I won't be as upset? what's the worst thing that will happen? When we spend some time really meditating upon it mindfully, we might not lose our cool as quickly. Also, distress tolerance is something that your son is teaching you, which is we can do so much at this moment. So let's do something that is actually more effective. When you're stressed out at a moment like this, you may want to pay attention to the senses that you feel and hear and taste and smell around you. Because when you focus on that, you're not focusing on the thing that caused you that upset, and you can maintain calm better. And I'll say one last thing about mindfulness and distress tolerance. When we are out in the ocean and we're swimming, and we discover that we got too far out, and we want to come back to the shoreline, but the undertow is pulling us back out, we have really two options. We either swim against the tide to reach home, which is dangerous, and that's what we do when we fight in the moment of the frenzy, or we lie on our back and we float along with the current, and then when the current finally changes, we have the strength to swim home to safety. So mindfulness and distress tolerance reminds us that the moments when we're most upset, we must flow with it, let it be kind, and when we are a little calmer, we can get back to ourselves.
That's beautifully said.
Always hard to follow.
In terms of that kind of self-regulation, so when you say flow, would that mean take yourself out of the picture? Like, what would be like 3 things that you could recommend? Breathing, just when you're saying to help that self-regulation, do you have some suggestions, either one?
So one would be
to practice it so it becomes automatic, right? You don't want to wait until you're in the moment to start. You need to practice your deep breathing before you get into those moments.
Well, this is stuff these are things that Tasia, you can say even better than me, but one would be to practice the proper breathing. And what we often talk about is box breathing, where you might inhale for 3 seconds and then hold for 3 seconds and then exhale on 3 seconds and hold for 3 seconds. And what you're doing is you're slowing your heart rate down, which is tricking your brain into recognizing that you might not be so anxious. Another thing that we often do is we squeeze our fingertips for 10 seconds, because what it's doing is it's pushing the blood from the extremities of our fingers straight directly to the heart. The index fingers have arteries that go right to the heart. And when you force blood to go to the heart, which contains white cells and red cells, the red cells, which have oxygen, go right to the brain. So squeezing your fingertips forces blood to the heart, which forces oxygen to the brain, which allows the brain, the food, to think more clearly. And these are 2 important techniques you can do when you're in the midst of a frenetic moment. And you will, in other words, be floating or flowing with the tide, not against it.
Beautiful. And I want to add something to that, if it's okay. As someone who was going through this like acute anxiety and depression, one of the things that actually did not work for me, and I've said this before on our panel on Clubhouse, is that if a person, God forbid, is having these thoughts of like, I am not enough, I'm really freaking out. I didn't have, thank God, suicidal ideation, but I was feeling like I don't want to live in this body. I'm so angry. I'm so sad right now. Like, how am I going to continue to wake up with all this sadness on my heart? And it was a very hard question for me to hear. And it may not be the best thing for you to just start practicing mindfulness and I'm going to sit here until it goes away kind of thing, because as I can tell you from personal experience, whatever you're thinking could potentially get bigger. And that is a very scary place to be. And I want to encourage anyone who's listening right now to find someone like, Tasia's online application of Haven, or come to my YouTube channel. I have several guided meditations, but also have a teacher, have someone that can sit with you and say, we're gonna sit here, we're gonna hold this space, because I believe, and this is just a basis of mindful meditation, that whenever you do feel something, the more you can just let yourself feel and notice, then you're actually releasing it. But I believe that it would be much better to have a great person, a professional that deals with mental wellness, to actually be with you, and good friends and support and reach out, because the mind can be a very scary place to be. And the second thing I wanted to say is, my Chinese doctor taught me this. If you just go like this from the ears all the way down here, this section of our body is the most vulnerable. We think it's other places. It's actually not, according to Chinese medicine. So if we do this, like gonna shake it off your shoulders 7 times in a row, just this area, it actually has an effect, and it can also do a little triage.
What
So we have
about
3.
breaking a chair against a wall? Does this help at all? Because, well, I don't want to get into it. Well, listen, unfortunately, we're out of time. We got to land the plane. So let's go. Hot take, 30 seconds, everybody. Final words, thoughts for the week. Let's start with Dr. Norman. We'll work our way to Tasia. What do you got, Doctor?
I would say that from today's takeaway, it would be that when you are finding yourself having feelings of depression or anxiety and or helplessness, hold on. Either turn to that person in your private audience, or as Barb says, reach out to someone who you respect and trust, and recognize that you are not alone in this world. We all suffer from a private ache, and when you reach towards others and take your sadness to a public abode, you will heal more effectively.
Love that. Dr. Haley, chime in. What are some thoughts?
A few things. Apologize to my husband. This is first on my list that I need to do.
One.
We're, in regards to the suicidality and depression, keep in mind that not everybody who's depressed ends up thinking about suicide. And so if you are one of those people who are depressed, it does not mean that you are now on high alert that you're going to end up, having those thoughts and doing those actions. So just keep in mind, they're 2 completely separate diagnoses. They do tend to go hand in hand. And there's a correlation, but they are separate. So don't think just because you're suffering from depression that is going to be the end all be all for you. And the self-regulation, recognizing that we all have emotions, and emotions are essential for our survival. They are here with us for a reason, to honor them, respect them, to hear them, and then be able to move forward with them is important. It's okay to have feelings.
Love it.
Great.
Yeah, Barb, what you got on this?
I really believe in expression and breathing and listening to music that you love, and finding art that is kind of saying how you're feeling right now, and really leaning into it, and then creating your own. I teach Meditate and Create, and the reason I started it is because I realized when I look back at my life, that was my drug of choice, to pray, meditate, breathe, and then create something from that which was irking me. And I'm still a really big proponent of that, because I, through my students, have seen the most incredible art that came from the worst of the worst moments in their life. And so I'm here to implore you to create from it. Don't silence yourself. Don't be shamed if you feel sad. Listen to the Pasek and Paul, You Will Be Found, Ben Platt soundtrack of Dear Evan Hansen. You're bound to feel better. Anything that talks about letting things out. So yeah, I'm really, really into creating from pain.
I mean, it worked for Alanis Morissette, Taylor Swift, and Olivia Rodrigo, so why not? Tasia, take us home, land the plane. What do you got on this?
Well, so much of it comes down to giving great voice and giving great listening. That's what we're doing today, and finding any sort of community, or maybe take it upon yourself. If you're having anxiety, reach out to someone that you know will hear you and listen to you. And don't forget, we have the mental wellness room, even in that you guys have created this space where people can come if that's where they need to come and they need to be heard. We will listen and hear you and honor you. And if you're having a good day and you're feeling full, maybe reach out to someone you care about who may need to hear your voice, and ask them, how are you feeling today? And I am here to love and listen to you. And then we can all grow and love each other. And that's where we're going to make it better. Make it better.
Make it better. That's what we're doing here.
Wow,
Just remember,
beautiful.
if you're watching the show, man, your current situation is not your final destination. We're here not to just survive. We're here to thrive. So that you got a lot of more. Let's go, Balboa. A lot of more. Right? So, all right. Hey, that's it for Dr. Norman, for Dr. Haley, for T-Money, Tasia, for Barb Bombs. We're out of here. We want you guys to stay encouraged, stay well, and we will see you next time on MBVS. Everybody be well. Peace out.